Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am going to work on my one little word prompt for July. And I know last month I said that my preference was definitely the arty prompts over the righty prompts. And that's where we're at today. So I'm going to do a little bit of art play. I haven't sped this up a whole lot because I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing this. I just, it maybe took me about 45 minutes. I know it was suggested that you could work on this throughout the day. I didn't have that much time to work on it. So when I finished work for the day, I just pulled out some paints. You can see the color palette I'm working with on the right there. I didn't buy anything specific for this prompt. So the reality is my color scheme is based off the kind of colors that I wanted to use for clear. But using the supplies that I had. So would it have been different if I had gone to the art store and bought supplies? Quite possibly. But this is what I've got. Teal and pink, no surprise. I've got a little bit of kind of a peachy beige color, a couple of deeper blues, which I don't use a lot, but I do really love them, and a whole lot of white. I really wanted my end result here to be reasonably light, not heavily colored. When I think about what I wanted for the word clear, it kind of felt in opposition to this prompt in itself. My whole sort of thinking behind clear is not cluttered and simple. And so art play, it kind of was the opposite of that. So I'm just trying not to add too much in the way of too many colors. And really, you've seen me, I'm using all sorts of things. I've got a brush, I used a roller here, I've used some scrapers, and this is the point where I thought, oh, it's getting too colored already. And so all I did was just lay down another coat of white over top. And it's just being kind of messy and free with it, so I can still see that color underneath. But really I do end up kind of alternating the color with a little bit of white just about every time I do it. Now, like I said, this was not a patient sort of process for me, so I am using a heat gun to kind of dry everything off in between. There are lots of layers where I definitely have not dried anything as well as I maybe should have. So lots of texture and whatnot created because of that. And I guess because of the prompt and how it's looking, that's not necessarily a bad thing. One thing I did decide to add in was a little bit of texture, and so this is a stencil that I made myself. I cut it on my silhouette with some stencil material, and I decided to add a little bit of texture paste in here just to give that sort of raised feeling. These little rainbows, I have used this stencil before, so I know I have to be really careful. Those inner pieces of the rainbows are very thin, and I did want to get the definition, so I'm just being very, very light-handed when I'm adding in that texture paste. The texture paste is kind of an off-whitey sort of color in itself, and so it does sort of stand out off that background. But what I decided to do was add a little bit of this bright blue paint in, because I haven't used a whole lot of the blue. The blue I used at the start is pretty much covered up, and I really did want to add some of that blue, and just the contrast I thought was really nice, that it's quite a lot darker and brighter than some of the other colors I've used on there. Plus it helps that sort of rainbow kind of stand out a little bit more. Now it looks like I've just dived straight in with my paint pen here, but I did go away and let that dry for a little bit. The texture paste is definitely one of those things that needs to be reasonably solid. You can see here though that wasn't completely solid, so I'm trying my best to be light-handed with the paint pen and not break my paint pen at the same time, but some of those rainbows were definitely not fully dry, so I guess patience might have been another good thing to add to this prompt, but I definitely didn't have it today. I just kind of wanted to make art and not spend a whole lot of time letting things dry in between. I'm really just kind of free-handing this sort of leaf shape. I do intend to use both of these pieces. That's why I'm working on two two pages in one go, kind of as one. These are just, they're the old calendar pages from my Get to Work book, and I've just ripped them out of an old planner, so that it's quite a sturdy kind of cardboard, and I never want to kind of throw that stuff away. I just keep it for this sort of thing. So I haven't prepped the cardstock in any way. It's not any sort of specific mixed media cardstock or anything like that, but I think it took all of this media really, really well. So I was pleased with that. But my intention behind using both is that I want to be able to have this kind of art page on both sides. I really loved the ripped texture from the inside there, so that's why I've got that in the middle. So effectively I'm working on a front and a back at the same time. So kind of aiming my designs towards that middle piece, because I know when I trim this down to fit into my Life Crafted album, the outside edges are what is going to be cut off. So that's just my very loose basic plan. Now, I quite liked those leafy drawings, but I wanted to add a little bit more color, and especially a little bit more pink back in. I'm really liking the contrast between the warmer paint colors and the cooler paint colors, so I just used a palette knife to kind of mash that pink back in. Could have been super neat and used a brush, but there's so much texture in behind there, and that's sort of what I'm aiming for. The other paint that I had pulled out was this gold metallic. I liked the idea of having a little bit of kind of metallic shininess in there. I'm just applying that with a bit of scrunched up plastic just to give more texture and be a little bit looser with it. And although I really do like it, but I feel like I'm losing the lightness of it again. It's like too much colory kind of layers in there. So I'm going to go back in with a little bit more white. I'm just going to scrape a little bit of white over the top just to kind of dull it all back a bit, especially around that black. So you can see those layers around those rainbow pieces. They're getting pretty thick with paint. So I was thinking at this point, I'm pretty close to being done here. I don't want to keep adding too much more. I'm liking the way it's looking. I've spent what I felt was an appropriate amount of time doing this. I just wanted to add a little bit more fine detail before I called it done and let this dry. So I'm just using the back of my paintbrush to dot some of that same tealy green paint in there. A lot of that's either going to get cut off or it's being covered up, and so I wanted to add a little bit more of that color back in. So I'm using some dots. Some are messier than others, but I like that kind of the finer details. Again, it's about that contrast, I guess. It contrasts nicely with the kind of messiness. These are a little bit more precise, just scattering them across both of those pages. Although I will say I found that was a little bit addicting. I couldn't stop myself. Like, I love the dotting, so I definitely might try this again, do a few more dots. And then I really, really did let this dry. I heated it with a heat gun, but I let it air dry as well. So here is my finished page. I've just trimmed that down to 5 by roughly 8 1/4. And then I trimmed each of those pieces. And then I just typed out a couple of little sentences on some vellum, and I stitched that onto the front and back using my sewing machine. And then I adhered the two pieces together with the sewing machine again, so it's nice and sturdy. One sturdy little piece to put into my album. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, I'm going to leave a couple more videos on here for you. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye guys.